Thank you. The session is now being recorded. I would like to start off by thanking all the participants for taking the time to join us. But most importantly, I would like to thank our facilitator for your effort with preparing and facilitating the workshop for today. But before introducing our facilitator to you, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules and important information. First, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak or type your question in the chat box. I will make sure to notify the presenter to address the question. The session is also recorded and the presentation slides will be requested from the presenter. Both the recording and the slides will be uploaded to our Moodle communities by the end of the week. So if you are not yet registered on our Moodle communities, you will just drop your information, your student number or within the chat box, then I can register you on the platforms, on the respective platform for those who are doing masters and for those who are still in doing honors and for those who are doing doctoral studies, and also for the PDRIF, if there are others who are doing who are PDRIF who have joined us. A feedback survey will also be sent during the session on the chat section. We would like to please request for you to fill this out for us to gain insight into whether the workshop was useful and also how we can improve in future preparations. That also gives us the opportunity to provide some kind words to our facilitator for their hard work and effort. So by filling the survey, this also ensures that you receive a certificate of attendance. Allow me to introduce our facilitator for the session, Ms. Dorette Heineck. I will read your bio in your hearing. Ms. Heineck was appointed as the head of college administration for the College of Business and Economics at the University of Johannesburg, effective 1 July 2024. With 29 years of experience in higher education administration, she joined the University of Johannesburg, former RAU, in 1995. She holds a National Diploma in Administrative Management, BTech in Business Administration with distinction, and a BCom Honors in Strategic Management. She is currently pursuing a master's degree. Her expertise lies in streamlining processes and improving team efficiency, particularly in student administration and the student life cycle journey. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Ms. Heineck, who will be leading us through the session for today. We appreciate your time and expertise, and we look forward to your valuable insights. I hand over to you, Ms. Heineck. You can now share your slides, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much. I'm going, before I start with sharing the slides, if everybody can just in the chat box just say to me what qualification you're currently doing, if it's an advanced diploma, an honors, so that I just know that what I'm touching on today is relevant to the group that is active today. So if you can just quickly tell me advanced diploma or an honors or a master's or a PhD, that will be great. And while you are doing that, I will then start with my sharing of my presentation. Just want to quickly see, because when I share, I can't see the comments. I just want to make sure what I'm seeing. So yes, PhD, some honors, some masters. Okay, fantastic. So let me just share again, and then we will start off with the presentation. So welcome everybody to the College of Business and Economics, specifically postgraduate processes. So before we start off with the processes, if we just want to introduce or just say what we will be covering today. So today I'm going to just introduce the different schools. We'll take you through the application process. I will explain a little bit about the entrance requirements, types of documents that we require, and the application process itself. We will touch on pre-registration. We will also be covering a registration process, and then specifically on master's and PhD level, we drill a little bit more down into detail because this is there's a lot of things happening when you are busy with your master's and PhD. So we will cover on our rules and regulations, as well as what happens when you finally submit for assessment. So what happens with that? So by starting off, so I will introduce, we have 6 schools within the College of Business and Economics. We have the School of Accountancy, we have the School of Consumer Intelligence and Information Systems. That particular school has got 3 departments and 1 center. So it will be the Department for Knowledge Management, the Department for Applied Information Systems, the Department for Marketing Management, and then also the Center for Data Sciences. Then we have the School of Economics, the School of Management. The School of Management also have 4 departments. The departments is for the Department for IPPM, for Finance and Investment, Transport and Supply Chain Management, Business Management. That all makes up the School of Management. And then we have the School of Public Management, Governance and Policy, Public Policy, as well as STH, which is the School of Tourism and Hospitality. So with the School of Hospitality and Tourism, obviously 2 departments, one for the tourism and one for hospitality itself. So when you start up with your journey at the university and you would like to pursue a honors or a master's or a PhD or postgraduate studies, it is important for the student itself to make sure that you do your homework a little bit. Make sure that you familiarize yourself with what is required, what is the entrance requirements, what is the due dates, that type of thing, so that journey is not that daunting to you when you do apply. So all our applications do open on the 1st of April. Usually the cohort is for the next year. So cohort meaning which academic year we are talking about. So if we talk about applications for 2026, that will be opening on the 1st of April on 2025. So our closing dates are also advertised on our UJ website. Just be aware that some of our masters and honors and PhD programs might close a little earlier. So some of them might close in September, but the bulk of them usually close in October. We do not accept any late applications because there is a lot of processes that needs to follow after the closing of the applications. So when we look at the applications and what exactly is it, where do you get the entrance requirements? How do you know what you must submit? That type of thing. We then look at specifically at the university or the College of Business and Economics postgraduate yearbook. It is also published on the university's webpage. If you drill down to the faculties and you click on the College of Business and Economics, you will see that there will be links for you, and one of the links is yearbooks. And then you will see also there will be 3 yearbooks. Yes, we are very, very big. So we split our undergrad with postgraduate from postgraduate, and then we also have non-subsidized programs that we have offerings for. So within the yearbook, you can then go, if we talk about honors, I'll touch a little bit on advanced diplomas, but from honors, postgraduate diplomas, masters and PhD, this will all be in the postgraduate yearbook. A very nifty tool to use to find out exactly if you're doing coursework, what is the subject that I will be doing. At the back of the book, you will also be able to get the calculation criteria for a specific module. You will get the purpose and the outcomes of the subject so you know what to cover. And it tells you the structure of how the qualification is structured. Say it is a coursework, it will list the coursework modules, the amount of years or how it is offered over a year or over 2 years. And then very, very important is the rules of access, which we then is the entrance requirement. It will then tell you specifically for a a qualification such as, say, for instance, we're talking about an honors degree in marketing management, there will be specific criteria that we will be looking for entrance to that honors program. So it's very easy to work through the book. It's listed, like I said, on the website. So when we look at documents and what type of documents that we require, so we have two types of students that will apply. We will have an external student and we will have an internal student. So an internal student typically is a student that would have studied their previous qualification. So say, for instance, we are looking at an honors program. The student most probably did the first degree here at UJ, and that we will see then as an internal student. An external student is somebody coming from outside. They did not do their honors here, but now they want to do their masters here. So the documentation is a little bit different for the two, specifically just to say about the academic record. So for the academic record, obviously, if you come from outside, we require an academic record because this is how we ultimately look at to see what you have done. Do you have the correct subjects, averages, the amount of years you have studied, that type of thing. So for everybody, it is an ID. If it is an internal student, we automatically generate our academic records from our system. For external students, obviously, we require then that certified academic record. The certification of these documents must not be older than 3 months when you submit. You don't have to submit again. We take it off of when you have submitted the documents, and that just needs not to be older than 3 months. For our international students, we obviously also require to have a SAQA evaluation certificate. This will then guide us into saying if your qualification is on the correct NQF level for the qualification that you're applying for. And then specifically for our masters and for our, sorry about that, for our masters and PhD, masters course, masters research directed and PhD, we also have a summary of research focus, which is also a required document. With this document, it streamlines a few questions that we might have. It just takes it and makes the process a little bit more streamlined. Questions like proposed research field will be in the questionnaire that you have to fill in. You can discuss your research problem that you want to tackle, the motivation of your study, and then obviously just a few lines of your main focus of what you will be researching for. So these documents, and then obviously if you are a PhD student or applying for PhD, we also require you to have a CV. So not all of these documents is necessary for all types of qualifications. Like for instance, honors or advanced diplomas, we won't require the SRF document. We won't require your CV, but we will. The main thing is ID and the academic record. That is what we are requiring for us to do the selection on our side. So with the progression of your application, so if you apply all the way, going all the way, you will then see that the communication that will come from the day that you apply. So every step or every time that we change something on your application, it's now forwarded to another department, or it is forwarded to the faculty, or there's an outcomes, you will get a letter to state what is the status of your application. You can also check this. You don't have to wait for that letter. You can also do the status on the university's webpage. We call it Check My Status, and that is very accurate. It is actually live. So whatever is currently showing on ITS or on our systems, it will reflect on Check My Status as well. And then our final selections, usually for our postgraduate qualifications, where we require from advanced diplomas all the way to the PhD, will be in the first 2 weeks of December. So pre-registration, I'm just going to touch a little bit on pre-registration. I'm not going to say too much about it because this is ultimately the department that makes the decision on pre-registration. Pre-registration is for a research-directed master's and for PhD students. So why do we have pre-registration? This is just preparation for your proposal. The policy states that you can apply for, or the student is allowed to register for pre-registration. Pre-registration meaning that you will be able to use facilities like the library and so on to get onto campus to do the proposal part of it. And then there will be a portion from the department side where they will have then specific deadlines for you to complete the proposal by, maybe a defending of the proposal or from the department side. So the registration is usually only from March, April, because it's only for 6 months. So it's usually for the second half of the year. And pre-registration is like a preparation for your full registration. So meaning that you still have to apply in order to, say, for instance, you are this year in pre-registration, you need to make sure that you do apply for 2026 for your full PhD or for your full master's, because this is how we do the selection from the pre-registration to the full master's or PhD program. So our registration process. So for our registration process, it is a specified period, January to February. This is for admitted students. So you will receive your outcomes the year prior. Obviously meeting all the entrance requirements and going through all the selection processes of the various qualifications. And this is, we will be sending out the information already in December from students to explain to them how the registration process works. Registration information is also available on the university's webpage. And then obviously if you are admitted, it is always best practice to secure your registration as soon as possible in order to avoid any disappointment of spaces getting full too quickly or something like that. So I always prompt my students or ask my students, please, 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 it is very important if you've been admitted to secure your registration or your space, make sure that you register as soon as possible. By dragging your feet, you must remember, as we go along in the process of registrations, spaces gets filled up, and we obviously have to be compliant with the DHET enrollment plan. The enrollment plan just guides us on how many applications we may take for a specific qualification, because it's all to do with resources and how many spaces there are at the university. So just be in mind that this is not something that now we're trying to stop somebody or something like that. There is actually compliance that we have to also in the background look at and make sure that we are compliant with the enrollment plans. So for our master's and PhD rules and regulations, so if you are, let me just first go back. I just wanted to say something else about the honors and for the advanced diplomas. There's a couple of our honors programs and our postgraduate diplomas where they require more than just the paper-based application. Paper-based meaning that we are just looking for your averages or something like that. There is a few of them on master's level as well, where they will require you to have an entrance exam. But that entrance test or that skills assessment test will be communicated to you early and in advance, and it's usually on a specific date. And please be aware of it. If they have communicated such a date with you, there is usually not another date. There is usually just that one date. So make sure if your qualification is not reliant on a not just the averages and like an academic paper-based application, but also if there is any entrance requirements, entrance tests that you have to write. For example, our honors program in economics and econometrics, they have an orientation which they have to, so they do selections in, we call it in phases. So the first phase is to give the students an opportunity to apply. Second phase is they will then look at how many applications we have, how many students comply with the minimum requirement, and then invite these students to an entrance exam in January. So first they have to attend a few classes, and then there is ultimately at the end of the week, they will write an entrance exam. And then that entrance exam is taken into consideration with your academic achievements of your academic record, and that's how they make the selection for some of the qualifications. So just be aware if you do get information from UJ, read the letter, make sure you are not maybe part of one of the qualifications that requires an entrance exam. Make sure that you are aware of what is required for you to be fully admitted at the end of the day. So most of the students in the room is actually masters and PhD students. So I am just going to take you through our processes. So looking specifically at masters and PhD students, rules and regulations, what we are governed by, how we look at certain things, how do we apply certain things. So I'm just going to take you through first the rules and regulation part of it. So for registration, as soon as the student is registered specifically on a master's directed, research directed and PhD, within the first month, you will then get a supervisor student agreement that you need to sign. That is something that you sign with your supervisor. You know, it's just an agreement between the two parties. And this is just to say again, registration, just remember, within a specific time frame. So if we look at our maximum and our minimum time frames for masters and PhD students, so obviously we don't want to get to the maximum period. We would like to stay within the minimum period or not go over the maximum period, because that just that you have to apply for certain things like study extension, and it is a very lengthy process to go through, but ultimately we want to stay within this guidance of how long a student may be registered for a full-time study, master's and on PhD level, or a part-time study, master's and PhD level. The full-time and the part, the minimum and the maximum period is indicated on the slides, as you can see. So as life goes on, sometimes it just happens and you have to apply for study extension. Just be aware that this is a very, you have to very motivate your application for an extension. They look at very exceptional circumstances. It can be limited to just 12 months, sometimes it's just 6 months. And then there's documentation from the college side or the administration side that you need to fill in when you get to a part if you have to apply for an extension. But obviously we ultimately don't want to go to extension, but as we know, life happens. Just be aware that there is certain rules and certain steps that we need to follow. So for an extension exam, for an example, to be approved, it needs to go to the College Higher Degrees Committee. So they made ultimately the decision to say yay or nay, but obviously taking into consideration the recommendation from the HOD, as well as the motivation from the supervisor and the student. So we also do get something like study interruption. So again, this is when a student, when a student submits this, it will go all the way. So there's certain stages of this interruption, application for interruption will go, and ultimately it will go then to the Higher Degrees Committee again to make that or grant that access to the student to say granting the interruption for the studies. So the interruption for the studies, again, it needs to be exceptional circumstances. A maximum of only 12 months may be given. Why we say only 12 months, you must remember when you are busy with research, the research needs to be relevant and it cannot be going on forever and ever. That is why there is that minimum and maximum period that we allow, because the research that you are busy with needs to be relevant and needs to be not old, getting old as we're asking for interruption and for extension. Okay, so again, there is certain forms that you need to submit. Here, your supervisor or your department will, and the college office, of course, will then guide you with the process of the forms that is necessary for you to submit. And you will then receive feedback, and feedback will be very specific to tell you how many months it's been interrupted or extended for, but it will be very, very specific information that will come to you. Then just to look at the progression of a student. So this means How do we monitor students to make sure that they do comply with completing the qualification and stay within the maximum period or the minimum period of studies for masters and PhD? How do we do this? We monitor it after each semester. So usually it is the departments that indicates to us the progress of the student. And these are just typically codes that we use when we allocate for a student to complete or stop their studies, or the student must apply for study extension or something like that. So just be aware of all of these things. So we get like, you may continue. We will tell you if you need to apply for, you reach your maximum period, meaning that you have to apply for study extension. You cannot register if you did not apply for the study extension. It will stop you for registration. And then ultimately, if there is no progression on the student, you will receive an academic exclusion. So this is now the great part, and we have now done a lot of research, and we are now there ready to submit. And before we can submit, there is a few things that guides us on how we should do the submission, when the submissions are, when will you graduate when you submit. And so I'm just going to take you high level through all of these processes. So starting off, so for your intention to submit, so usually it will be in your final year that you are doing this. You will then 4 months prior to submission is just to prompt us to make sure everything is correct on our side. The necessary assessors and examiners are appointed, that type of thing. Your title is correct. The title is usually within the first 6 months, it will be registered, but this is just to help us from the administrative point of view, to prompt us to say, I am ready for submission within 4 months. And then we do the necessary checks to make sure that everything is correct for the student to submit. So there is 2 deadlines. One is the 31st of May and for the first semester, and then the second one is the 31st of October. So these assessments usually takes about 6 weeks to complete. So when you submit, another 6 weeks from the 31st of May or the 31st of October, before we most probably will have an outcomes of your assessment. For you, if just to explain, should you submit after this date, but it's for the 1st of September, after the 31st of May, so any submissions from the 1st to the 31st, you are liable to register for them for the second semester, and your graduation is going to be most probably in March, May of the following year. But should you comply and you have admitted and everything is finalized from our side, higher degrees, everything went through, you will most probably graduate within that same year in October. It is just if you do afterwards and there is delays for certain committees, you might only graduate in the March, May ceremonies. For the second semester, it's usually when we get most of our submissions, it is the 31st of October. Keeping in mind, it takes another 6 weeks before we have an outcomes, making that more or less December, January side. Most of the institutions are closed in December. So should you then submit after the 31st of October, meaning from the 1st of November of that particular year until the 31st of the next year, you will be required to register for the semester 1 of the following year. So your graduation is most probably going to be in March, May, October, depending on how quickly we get the reports back from the external assessors. So just like I said, the final submissions. For us to go back to my page, I turned the page too quick. I'm so sorry. Okay, so there you can see for us, for submissions, it is important for us to do that intent to submit, because you have to get approval from your supervisor that you are going to submit. So you cannot just come to the faculty and say, oh no, I want to now submit. It is necessary for you to get all the documentation that is required from the supervisor in order for you to say you can now submit. So it's not the student is submitting, it's actually the student and the supervisor is saying, yes, the student can submit. So again, just to show that there is the period for assessment is about 4 to 6 months, 6 weeks, sorry. For the student, after the process of the assessments, there is certain documentation that we are required for the student to submit. So when we do the submissions for, there is a specific email address that we send it out to. There's documentation such as a declaration that you have to submit, an affidavit that you have to submit. You have to sign that you have a language edited the thesis or the minor dissertation or the report. You have to submit a Turnitin report as well. And then obviously your minor dissertation or your thesis needs to be on a PDF or a Word format in order then for us to send it out to the external assessors. So then just one last thing before we go, or before I take some questions, is there's obviously a process that will happen after we get the feedback from the assessors. So this bit is just very, very close to graduations. So there is a few things that needs to happen on our side. So we will then guide the student again. What exactly is it required for him to be the outcomes of the assessment to be approved. We set up, everything needs to go to our higher degrees committee. And then our PhD students, not just the higher degrees committee, it will also go to Senate higher degrees. And for a PhD student, we also have a oral defense that needs to take place before we can say that the student has complied with all the requirements for the qualifications. That is it. Charlene, I don't know if I've missed something. I think I've covered everything.
I think that was everything.
So I can just go back here.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Yemek, for facilitating today's workshop. I just want to ask from you if it's fine to open the floor for discussions, for contributions and for questions.
No problem, you can.
Okay, so I'll unmute all the mics of the participants. If you have a question, just raise your virtual hand and ask the question. Unmute yourself and ask the question. So let me allow the mics of everyone. Just make sure that your mic is muted when you are not asking any question or making any contribution. So I have allowed the mics of everyone. We'll start with Mark. May you please unmute yourself and ask your question or make a contribution.
Thank you for that good presentation. I have two questions. I just want to know, firstly, does CBE send the progress letter regarding the progress of applications to the applicant, or is it the enrollment center that does it? And secondly, when it comes to second semester results, academic results, say of our honors and master's students who want to apply for the next degree, is there a cutoff date as to when the university must send those students the results, just so that we can make the final decision regarding selection of students? Thank you.
And Dr. Marcus, your first question again? Sorry, I missed.
Okay, no problem. The first question is when you mentioned a letter that says
Yes.
a letter goes out. Is it CBE that sends the letter, or is it enrollments or registrations?
No problem, Doc, I can answer. Yes, so this is the communication. It is scrutinized for the whole university, and it is something that is sent out. We call it not specific for a department or a college or something like that. It is going to come from the enrollment center, but they do ask us for input on letters. So it sometimes is very standard. Especially on master's and PhD level, you will see it will become a little bit more complicated because there's other information that we require, but there the department will then step in and say what it is that is required. But the standard way going from applying until you get your outcomes, there will be all the way when we do a change on your status of your application. So say, for instance, when you apply, you will get a letter to say, thank you for your application. Then you will see the letter will progress to, I have now sent it to the relevant college for to review. You will get a letter again. Then if we send that application to the department, we will then say we are sending it now to the department, and so on until you get an outcomes, either decline, conditional, or whatever the case might be. But the letter comes from the university's server. So it is something that we look at, and we make sure that the information that goes out to the student is the correct information. It is just on M&D level that it is a little bit different, because there is sometimes more information that you require from the student, or you might have interviews that is scheduled, but that will be then coming from the department itself. Then for Dr. Marco, your second question for the finalization of the results. If you are an internal student, we already have your results. So this is why our final selection is only the last 2 weeks in December, because our exams for anything below honors and for coursework masters, for the coursework itself, it's usually the release date is around about the end of November. So we will be fine with getting the information from the internal students. It is the external students that might have a little bit of a delay, because some of the universities only give their final outcomes of their examinations in January. But our letters will be very specific to say we have a specific cutoff date where you have to submit your academic records, specifically if you come from an external institution and not from UJ. Our letters internally also states to students, please do not submit again an academic report, because we do have your applications. Does this cover your question, Doc?
Yes, thank you very much. When you say we do have the internal students, say for instance, honors students applying for a master's in strategy, we need to have those results uploaded onto perceptive content, for instance, as part of the application pack. Is that then automatically loaded by the enrollment center or someone internally at UJ?
Yes, Doc, that is correct. So once the results are out and our annual results are out, also released, stating the student have completed the qualification, we run a program in the background, and this is how we see what the outcomes of the application. So there's going to be a couple of academic records, the ones currently busy. So say, for instance, the results up until June, and then there will be another one generated for a full set of the year's academic record.
Okay, my last question on that. These letters that go out to students throughout the process from the university, can we view them on perceptive content, or is there another place we can view them if we want to just see what the students are getting, what communication?
Okay, so no, not on perspective content, Prof. Doc, it is only on ITS we can view that. But students are also, when they check their statuses, they are also able to view, if you missed it, maybe going to a specific email address, you will also be able to view the letter on UJ's website. Specifically there, check your status, there is something like that. But yes.
I've seen there was a number of questions from Dr. Marka. I think have all the questions been answered?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
If,
I've
even
asked all
if-
of them. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. So let me just check maybe other questions on the chat that we can address before we move on to the end that has been raised. So I see this one has been answered. I'm doing coursework, masters this year. Am I required to register again next year for the research? It's coming from Fred.
If the student is doing coursework this year, yes, you will be required to do the research part of it. So this is where it's important to go back to the yearbook of the university or of the college, and there it will give you a guidance of what is required for you to complete this qualification. So it will list all the subjects for your coursework, plus it will also list the subjects for the research part of it.
Yeah, I think this one from Tokozani, it has been answered. That was asking that, so for a student working overseas, do I need to come in to submit the dissertation? So the answer says no, you submit electronically to CBE submissions at uj.ac.za. Can we see the letters sent to, I think this is for Dr. Maka, it has been addressed. Okay, we can move on to Dion. Dion, you may unmute yourself and ask your question.
Great, thank you very much. I just wanted to find out more about the oral. You mentioned there was an oral submission as part of the PhD process to submit at the end for your dissertation or for your thesis. I just wonder if you could provide some more details around what that entails.
So this is called an oral defense.
Yeah.
I will ask Charlene just to come in here for us, and she will explain to you. It is something that is arranged after all the results are out. So this is the last step, but it's arranged by the department. Charlene, if I've mentioned everything that I need to mention, you can just go on.
Things is arranged by the department after your results are available. And the assessors are invited to this oral defense. It's not an additional assessment, it's more a discussion about your research and to determine if you did research yourself.
Dion, does that answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, I mean that sounds fair. I suppose I was just wondering about the process, but I mean, so is it a discussion with specific individuals? I mean, how does that process work? Do they set up a session with you, and yeah, how does that? Do they just ask you about your dissertation, and is that the process?
Yeah, assessors that assess your thesis will be it's an online meeting, a Teams meeting. Your supervisor will also,
yeah.
Your supervisor will also be present, and you, of course, and then there's a facilitator.
Charlene, can I put my 2 cents in there? It's Dr. Maka. For what it's worth, are you talking about a doctoral viva?
That's correct. We call it the oral defense.
Yeah. So what I've said in a few. So normally what happens is you get a non-assessing chair. So it's an academic that the department nominates who is chairing that process. Then you get the student that goes there, the 2 supervisors. You get the external and internal examiners and any other guests that may be invited from the department or outside. And then the student basically has about 15 to 20 minutes to present on their thesis, a very summarized version. And then you go into a question and answer session with the your examiner. So the supervisors don't say anything, they're silent throughout. And it's the examiners asking the student questions. It's normally questions about, how would you have done things differently and that kind of thing. They just want to see if you've done the work yourself and someone else hasn't written that thesis for you.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. I saw a hand from, is it Prof. Roseanne? Prof. Smith, you may ask your question or make your contribution. Maybe whilst we are awaiting, I also had some form of contribution and also a question. I just noted maybe throughout the presentation that the postgraduate cycle, it's a journey, it's a process that consists of diverse phases with distinct requirements. The question that I wanted to ask is that I think within those phases, there are quite a number of policies that apply at each distinct phase. So I wanted to ask that, what are the most important policy documents at the onset, when someone gets admitted for postgraduate studies, that they must, be knowledgeable of before this whole process begins? And also maybe if you can just share other important policies along the cycle, and also where can they obtain that? I know that some of them you can get them from the corporate governance, but are there some policies that are specific to the CBE that we may possibly need to bring to the attention of the participants who have joined, who are pursuing their postgraduate studies? Thank you.
No problem. So obviously, first off, it's available to all students, even on your UJ ULinks portal. It's the university's academic rules and regulations. So this is very important. It guides you a lot. But then when you get into different types of like assessment, there will be a policy for the pre-registrations, there's a policy. Anything that you can think of, there is policies for it. But the thing that a student needs to adhere to is our academic rules and regulations, which there is a section for every little thing in the rules and regulations. So they will be on how we administer applications for masters, for postgraduates, for honors, anything that you can think of. It is inclusive of that. And then obviously there's policies that governs us to do certain things from there. Charlene, is there something that students need to be specifically attended to on a policy, or am I covering everything with the rules and regulations?
It's the UJI degrees policy. So that guides us on a lot of our administrative matters.
Okay, just maybe a follow-up question. So all this, is it available on the UJ link, or some of them you have to go to the website of corporate governance? Because I've done a presentation before where I accessed quite a number of policies from the corporate governance. So where can they possibly access this from?
Most of these ones is through corporate governance because it's institution. So it will not be like on a university website itself, but it is a internal policy. So it will be via the university's corporate governance office.
All right. No, thank you. If is there any other, any more questions from the participants? I also see that there are no questions on the chat. So given this, I would like to once again express our appreciation to the participants for being with us in today's workshop, and also for Ms. Heineck for agreeing and taking the time to prepare and facilitate the RCD workshop for today. I would like to remind all the participants that I've posted a feedback survey link in the chat section. Your feedback is important to us, so please kindly fill in the workshop evaluation form posted in the chat box for your access. I think it takes about 3 minutes to complete that form. So by filling out the survey, it also ensures that you receive a certificate of attendance. And I would like you to also note that the recording and presentation will be uploaded to our Moodle community under the workshop information and resources in about 3 to 5 working days after review of the content. So for more information about the RCD, you can visit us on www.uj.ac.za/postgraduate school/research capacity development. And for any inquiries, you can contact us on rcd-inquiries@uj.ac.za. I would like to once again thank you for your participation and for continuing to support the RCD unit. I think I've seen quite a number of academic staff, some professors, and also students, as well as other members of staff present in this workshop. I thank you for your support, and allow me to check again if there are any questions that are pending in the chat. And given that there are no questions, with your permission, Ms. Enek, if you can allow me to end the session.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm now stopping the recording. And after stopping the recording, then I can end the session for today. Okay, I've stopped the recording. I'm just waiting for it